Right, in other news, a legendary department store is calling it quits. And they're blaming the Chancellor on the way out.
Yes, Beales, founded back in 1881, is closing its last branch with a cheeky dig at Rachel Reeves. The boss says soaring taxes have simply made the business unviable. Well,
joining us now is the CEO of the British Independent Retailers Association, Andrew Goodacre. Thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Just your thoughts on this. So Beales, very sad day, closing down the last store, 144 years old, this department store, and they're making a little political statement, aren't they?
And I don't blame them. You know, I think many retailers feel the same way Beales do, deeply disappointed in a Labour government that pre-election talked about reforming business rates, wholesale reform of business rates, talked about revitalising high streets, and yet all those businesses have seen is a triple whammy of cost increases, national insurance, national living wage and business rates. So I'm not surprised that Beales are required or feel it necessary to point that out to the people who made those decisions.
And this is a time when brick and mortar shops are facing increased competition from online.
Yep.
People are changing the way that they shop. And on top of that, rather than help, there seem to be punitive taxes after punitive taxes. It does seem strange, given how the Labour Party was speaking before the general election, saying that we're not going to raise national insurance.
Sure.
Now the Chancellor says, well, she's stuck to her promise because she's putting this tax on business rather than on employees. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. I think there was a massive error of judgment in the way they prepared for that budget, because they recognised the need to raise money, but they only left themselves with one option, and that was business. And retail are one of the biggest employers as a sector. So it's really going to hurt retailers of all sizes. And retail is often the first job for people. You know, we want to get young people back at work. There's a real problem in this country, young people not working. And retail in the past has been a way for them to learn good, important skills. And that's becoming increasingly difficult for them to achieve as well. So I think the policy will backfire in many different ways. Yes, it may generate extra income, but at what cost to the high street and what cost to young people looking for jobs?
Yeah, jobs especially. I wonder what you also make of this new Treasury Committee report. It's essentially warning that shops could be forced in the future to accept cash.
Yes.
Very interesting one. Also in light of the blackouts on the continent as well, where people, you know, if they didn't have cash, they couldn't buy anything.
Yeah, I was looking at this, and if in our membership, I can only think of one member who only takes card. And it's a small shop in Shoreham, haberdashery, knitting yarns, and that's her choice. Most of our members wouldn't want to lose a sale because they don't take cash. And we recognise most retailers, a high percentage of retailers recognise that some people, older people, disabled people, people wanting to budget their spend better, want to use cash. So we're all for encouraging people to be able to use cash. What we do need to see, however, is a cohesive approach. If you want businesses to accept cash, you need banking in order to allow them to manage that cash. You know, they have to go to banks to cash it, to change it, to bring change in. And what businesses are finding is that banks are closing their branches. You know, by tens and hundreds of branches closed over the last few years. And so that makes it harder for business to work with cash.
Yeah, so they've got all this cash lying around that they need to put in a bank because they can't get to a branch.
Okay, saying to a business, by all means, you know, take cash, but cohesively, you need to allow them to manage that cash, move it onto the bank safely and with less fees. So
the wider infrastructure is so important there.
Well, in a way, the banks are driving cash out of the system.
Yeah,
okay, well, Andrew Goodacre, executive of the British Independent Retailers Association, thanks indeed for joining us and coming into the studio too.
We should say GB News has reached out to the Treasury for a comment on this one.